So it's now official that President Raisi, Amir Abdollahian, the Foreign Secretary of the Islamic Republic, the governor of East Azerbaijan, as well as the Friday prayers leader of Tabriz have perished in what's being described as a helicopter crash. So in this video, I want to go through the circumstances that led up to all of this, where this took place, the reporting that was involved, and what could be the major causes and theories behind this so-called helicopter crash. So what do we know? Around yesterday, 12 to 1 p.m. UK time, there were reports emerging on social media platforms like X of an incident of a helicopter hard landing. It wasn't being described as a crash, but a hard landing. There was also reports to go along with it that President Raisi of the Islamic Republic, the Foreign Secretary Amir Abdollahian, were involved as part of the group in those helicopters. Initial reports were that the helicopters that were involved, that it was just a hard landing. No crash being described, it was being downplayed, and that President Raisi was okay, and so was Amir Abdollahian, the Foreign Secretary. Then there was reports that there were actually injuries involved, but it wasn't life-threatening. Then there were reports that it was actually life-threatening, but they weren't killed. Later reports were that there were direct communications being had with the entourage of Raisi's team. The mobile signals were being collated and detected, which were then later debunked. Then there were reports that the helicopter had been found, but later rejected by the Red Crescent, who actually led the search at the time. So what was the area involving this helicopter crash? It was in East Azerbaijan area of Iran. So why was the trip taking place? It was a trip taking place in terms of a commemoration of an unveiling of an energy project in that particular area. So first question, why was it just that helicopter and not the other two helicopters that led to the fatalities and crash? The same helicopter that had the president, the foreign secretary, the governor, and also the Friday prayers leader. Second question, why were all the VIPs on one particular helicopter? Normally in these kind of things, risk planning is involved where they spread the VIPs and not have them in one particular area or one mode of transport. The third question, at the time it was described that weather conditions were bad in East Azerbaijan. It was foggy, it wasn't weather conditions conducive to flying. Even seasoned pilots have said they would struggle in such conditions, and it would take a brilliant pilot to navigate through such weather conditions. So why didn't they just delay the trip? Why have the trip and the necessity of going now from East Azerbaijan back to Tehran regardless of the weather conditions? So what could be the causes behind this helicopter crash? Well, firstly, it could be exactly that. Just an accident and a crash that happened because of bad weather. So what we do know is people like Zarif, the former foreign secretary of the Islamic Republic, has been crying out saying this is all down to the sanctions because they've got an aging fleet, they're not able to get parts, it's hard to do maintenance, and this is all the fault of the United States and sanctions imposed on the Islamic Republic. Could it be just an accident? Well, it could, right? There was poor visibility. There's an aging fleet in terms of its aircraft. A lot of reports around the Iranian aircraft that it's not the safest, in fact, highly dangerous. Second potential cause, foul play in terms of an assassination of Raisi and co. Some people would say, well, what did the others have to do with anything? They could be just wrong place in the wrong time. Collateral damage. So what foul play could there be? Could be internal foul play. There's a lot of pivoting and posturing inside the Islamic Republic in terms of the Game of Thrones. You've got a supreme leader in Ali Khamenei who's around 85 years old, not in the best of health conditions. So much rumors, so much talk is about succession. who's going to succeed Khamenei and the Supreme Leader, because the Supreme Leader position is the absolute position when it comes to the Islamic Republic. So many people focus on the president and that role. Constitutionally is the second most important role. In reality, it's not. It's more of a puppet role. Everything's dictated by the Supreme Leader and his office and that inner circle. So you've got the IRGC that have taken charge of the country in terms of the economy, 80% of the economy. You've got Ali Khamenei and his time as Supreme Leader, over 37 years of which, who's bolstered the IRGC in terms of their positions, because he never had the qualifications to become Supreme Leader in the first place. Look at some of the videos where he talked about it was wrong for him to become Supreme Leader, that he wasn't qualified enough. In fact, it was a temporary kind of caretaker position where Khomeini, the founder of the Islamic Republic, had died, and that caretaker position would just be there for a year or so. Well, the rest is history. So what did he do? He invested everything in terms of the IRGC to bolster his position for what he lacked in religious credentials. So the president role has been one to be jostled out in terms of the West and everything else when it comes to nuclear negotiations, when it comes to framing the Islamic Republic as a republic. It's certainly not that, a republic, whereas elections are manufactured, where you've got the Assembly of Experts, where you've got the Guardian Council. The Guardian Council vets all people when it comes to those that want to take part in elections. So what could be the foul play? Well, the foul play internally in terms of this Game of Thrones is that just because they form a regime, it doesn't mean they like each other. In fact, such regimes, there's a lot of jealousy, there's a lot of envy, there's a lot of competition. Each are pitted against the other to gain favour of the Supreme Leader. It's happened in many regimes. You look at Hitler and the Nazis, etc. It's a status quo that happens often. So if there was internal foul play, who could it possibly be? And how would they benefit? Well, one person could be Mujtaba, who is the son of Ali Khamenei, who's seen widely as the person that Khamenei wants to succeed him as being Supreme Leader. He's been building up a base around the IRGC, trying to build up his religious credentials. And he was seen as him competing with Raisi for that top job. Those were the two main contenders to become Supreme Leader. And that Raisi was seen as more and more of a threat. And what's the best way to navigate your way up to secure that job? Get rid of your opponent. Has it been done before? Well, there's been a lot said in the past where Khomeini's son suddenly died of a heart attack, which didn't lead to him succeeding. You then have the incident around Rafsanjani, who's known as the White Shark, one of the main key pillars of the Islamic Republic. He was actually involved in orchestrating Khamenei to become Supreme Leader. You'll see the videos of him putting his hand up, orchestrating the Assembly of Experts, whose only role is to select the Supreme Leader in the Islamic Republic and to oversee their competence, which is de facto because they've overseen 37 years and never issued any objection to that of Ali Khamenei's role as Supreme Leader. So Mujtaba could be a main contender behind potential foul play. Get rid of your main opponent and then it becomes more of a coronation. Who else could benefit internally? Some people describe as the Marxist Islamists, those of the Islamic left that want to get back the reformist movement. So the likes of Rouhani, the ex-president of the Islamic Republic, the likes of Zarif, the former foreign secretary of the Islamic Republic, that want to take a different slant in keeping the Islamic Republic show on the road, but not go down the hardline route instead. The reformists have been around for so many years, have been duping the Islamic Republic in terms of the people inside Iran, whereby they make out they're on the side of the people, but in reality they're very much part of the establishment. So you have the choice of the white turban versus the black turban when it comes to elections. You then have what's called progressives, like Zarif. Those so-called reformers. People like Mousavi, Karoubi, when it came to the Green Movement in 2009, Where Is My Vote, with Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. But they're very much part of the establishment. And the reformist movement is dead. One of the main pillars of that reformist movement was Khatami, the president of the Islamic Republic, around 1997 period. People's faith in evolution is no longer. They're done with reformist and the reformist movement, which have helped largely the Islamic Republic because it's been the best PR, the best marketing team of the Islamic Republic. So could they have been involved in foul play, in getting rid of the main hardliner, key figure being Raisi? Could. Is it likely? Probably not. Most presidents that finish their term get sidelined. You look at Ahmadinejad, you look at what happened to Rafsanjani, etc. They're not allowed to rerun again. They become voices from the outside. The reformist movement doesn't have much power. All of the power lies with the IRGC and the hardliners. And there's the same side of the same coin in terms of what they're wanting, what they're spouting, what they're about. So the hardline movement and the hardliners from the so-called parliamentary elections that went by, where there was unbelievable record low turnout from even their own accounts of less than 10% in Tehran, that people have voted because there's nothing to vote for. People have lost all faith in any of these institutions. So the hardliners dominated the parliament, hardline president, and a hardline supreme leader. So the likelihood of reformers, if there was foul play internally behind this helicopter crash, is highly unlikely. If there has been internal foul play between competing elements of that regime, it would be more likely those around Mujtaba in terms of having absolute succession of the supreme leader role and having no other opponents. There is a third potential internal foul play option or cause, and that could be someone who actually was involved in the maintenance of the helicopter, someone who's sympathetic and empathetic to those of the people of Iran and what went on with Women Life Freedom, the revolution of Mahsa Amini, who may have had family members suffering or at the hands of the regime, etc. It sounds fantastical in terms of fantasy that could be a potential option, but it could be someone who, for the people of Iran, might be an unintended hero that's in the shadows, that had actual sabotage of that particular helicopter when it came to maintenance. Again, the likelihood of that is highly unlikely because there's lots of checks and balances within that type of regime for such things, normally. So if there's internal foul play, it would be around Mujtaba and a competing section of the regime that wanted Raisi gone. He had served his purpose, he was seen as a threat, and they didn't want that. Khamenei and Mujtaba did not want that. So therefore, something was orchestrated. People have described the assassination of Soleimani, for example, under Trump, as being one where it was coordinated. That the Ayatollahs had gave up Soleimani because he was getting too much the cult of personality. He was actually seen more of a threat to the Islamic Republic, because one thing you don't want to do in the Islamic Republic is become a force of personality that could challenge that of the status and the role of the supreme leader. Some people say not. They fatally weakened the regime by what happened to Soleimani, and the Quds force has never been the same, which could make sense because look at what's happened with Hamas and the war with Israel. They haven't been effective. They're having problems in Syria. They're having problems in Iraq. Their main proxies are getting more and more disillusioned because so-called red lines never actually turn into reality. Then you have the incident of all the rockets that happened with Israel and the Islamic Republic, where 99% of which were all shot down. People say it was a token thing. They told everyone about it. They actually didn't want to do anything because they didn't want to get involved in the war with Israel. It was more face-saving, that they had to be seen to be defending the commanders of the Islamic Republic. Remember, 18 or so commanders have been killed since October the 7th with the war with Israel. So they had to respond in some way. Otherwise, they could be accused of not giving a care or damn to those within the IRGC, which then would make people in the IRGC to question, well, why are we doing this? We're just sacrificial lambs. So what could be another main cause? Some people say it could be Mossad and Israel. A lot of the times Israel gets blamed for everything. Remember, the three pillars of the Islamic Republic is death to America, death to Israel, and the hijab. So Israel, Mossad, is accused of so many aspects. Mossad has a history of carrying out covert assassinations or purported to be nuclear scientists, but they've never acted in terms of targeting political leaders. They have targeted the IRGC and generals and commanders, part of that military apparatus. Why would people say, apart from the obvious, let's blame Mossad and Israel all the time for everything that happens? Well, it could be because of what happened with the Islamic Republic and the attack on Israeli territory. Because the retaliation back from Israel was mute. It was very limited. It disappointed a lot of Iranians, for example, that want the end of this regime. The Islamic Republic and the IRGC were able to claim, look, see, Israel is frightened of the IRGC. No one can touch us. We got the upper hand. We sent 400, they didn't do nothing. It wasn't an attack, it was an infiltration. It was a little bit of an act of sabotage. It was nothing. It was certainly less than what Israel were going to do on the night when the attack happened. The Netanyahu and the government were going to be reported to do a significant attack, but were talked out of it by Joe Biden, the President of the United States, and Democrats, who have always had a weakness for the Islamic Republic, going back to Jimmy Carter's day, and also all the sanction waivers and the billions that's enabled the Islamic Republic in the last few years through sanctions not being enforced and all the waivers under Biden and the Democratic administration in the United States. So there's always the case of no smoke without fire. So is there legitimate smoke that could lead to a fire, and in essence the Mossad maybe being behind the crash involving Raisi and co? Well, the retaliation was so mute, so limited. Some might argue maybe this was the retaliation, the full retaliation, in holding to account Raisi, who has his fingerprints all over what happened with the rocket attacks along with Khamenei on Israel, and also what's gone on with October the 7th. It's an open secret that Hamas got trained allegedly in the Islamic Republic, has been financed. There's meetings with Raisi and the top leaders of Hamas, etc. And as time goes by, there were reports from Israel that when we do an attack, we'll do it at a point at our choosing. When we do it and how we do it will be a matter for us, and we won't be dictated on that matter. So maybe this was a targeted assassination by Mossad and Israel on Raisi and co. that would then take into account the one helicopter that got crashed, that would then take into account that helicopter involving all the most important VIPs, that then would take into account the clandestine kind of nature of Mossad and this attack and retaliation. So Israel's denied it officially in terms of their sources coming out of the Israeli government. It hasn't acted that way in the past. It never tackles political leaders, but actually those associated with terrorism and military kind of components has been its modus operandi? How likely could it have been in terms of Mossad in Israel? It might be. It might be. It's an obvious place to go in terms of the Islamic Republic and everything that Israel gets blamed with these kind of things. So to summarize and conclude, accident, potentially, probability, maybe 30%, foul play internally, 50%, and then the other 20% being Mossad and Israel behind what happened with this helicopter crash. Something feels off, and normally in life, when one thing is off, then everything is off. So I would love your comments in the video. Who do you think was behind this? What implications does this have for Iran? What implications does it have for women life freedom, which is stalled in some ways? There's a massive crisis going on inside the Islamic Republic because isolation, the show keeps on, IAC and co get replaced. There's plenty of people to replace these individuals, but when you take it into the wider context of a regime that's failing in terms of legitimacy, by all polls, 85 to 90% of Iranians want the end of the Islamic Republic, hyperinflation of around 60% or more, poverty rates climbing, where people don't even have money for bread and meat, where their wages are worthless if they do get paid, where the whole belief in the system in terms of evolution has gone, and also a currency that's the world's worst performing currency, where toilet paper is worth more than the real, where elections are now people not rocking up, turning up, where this regime is going more and more hardline, more and more militant, in a population that's effectively being held hostage against its will, where Iranians are done with this regime. So if you take it into the wider context and what's going on with Israel, with Hamas, with their so-called red lines, they've had so many, and yet nothing ever really quite happens in terms of muted responses in supporting their proxies, where the Islamic Republic is being seen more and more as a paper tiger. So the ramifications of which, could this lead to a vacuum? Could this lead to such instability that we start to see disintegration from within? Remember, no dictator survives for good. That's the one thing about all of these things. No dictator ever stays forever. Not one throughout history. Could we be overstating this? And in fact, it won't be any kind of vacuum, that it will soon be forgotten. And actually, this suits the Ayatollahs in terms of their 2.0 version of the Islamic Republic, to buy more years and to keep that show on the road, because the main priority of the Islamic Republic is to keep the Islamic Republic. It's never been for Iranians. It's never been for Iran. It's there for only the Islamic Republic. The IRGC is there to protect the Islamic Republic and to keep the Islamic Republic in power. Khomeini once said, even sacrifice religious principles in order to maintain the Islamic Republic. So what real ramifications is going to come out of this? Is this a turning point? Is this a boost to those inside Iran that want freedom and an end to an open prison, and to have a sense of liberty and the end of the Islamic Republic? Or in fact, are we going to have more of a police state than ever before, where the Islamic Republic is going to try to turn Iran into a North Korea of the Middle East? I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments of this video and what your theory is and what this means for Iran and Iranians.